The royal mistake. Duchess Serafina of the Celestian Dominion stood at the entrance of St. Aurora's Interstellar Medical Center, her iridescent scales shimmering under the artificial sunlight. This establishment is barely worthy of treating common merchants, let alone someone of my status, she declared, her third eye twitching with displeasure. Behind her, Chief Strategist Vaylor bowed deeply, his tentacles curling in practiced deference. Your Highness, I assure you this is the finest medical facility in the Centauri sector. They treat dignitaries from 17 different star systems, 17 backward systems, perhaps? Serafina sneered, gliding through the hospital's quantum glass doors. The pristine white walls and advanced medical equipment did little to impress her. After all, she came from a civilization that had mastered cellular regeneration eons ago. But diplomatic protocol demanded she receive her mandatory health screening here at this supposedly neutral facility. As they approached the reception area, Serafina noticed something that made all four of her hearts skip a beat. A Terran of all species was working at the front desk. The primitive creature wore the standard medical uniform, its pale skin reflecting the harsh hospital lighting in a most unflattering way. "Welcome to ST Aurora's," the Terran female said, looking up from her holoscreen with a warm smile. "I'm Medic Alara Vaughn. I will be handling your preliminary examination today." Seraphine's scales flared in outrage. Preliminary examination? By a Terran? Vaylor, surely this is some sort of misunderstanding. Alara maintained her professional demeanor, though Serafina noticed a slight tightening around her eyes. "Duchess Serafina, I assure you, I'm fully qualified in xenophysiology, with a specialization in Celestian biology." "How quaint," Serafina replied, her voice dripping with condescension. "A species that barely managed space flight a century ago, presuming to understand the complexities of Celestian physiology. What's next? Shall we have a Targonian slug perform brain surgery?" The other patients in the waiting area shifted uncomfortably. An Andromedian ambassador quickly buried all 7 of his faces in a medical journal, while a Proximan merchant suddenly found the ceiling fascinating. Alara Vaughn's smile never wavered. "Your concerns are noted, Your Highness. However, hospital policy requires all incoming patients to undergo standard processing, unless you would prefer to seek medical certification elsewhere." Vaylor cleared his throat nervously. "Your Highness, the trade agreement specifically requires certification from St. Aurora's. Perhaps we could—" "Fine," Serafina interrupted, her scales now a brilliant shade of irritation. "But let it be known that I submit to this indignity under protest. And you, Terran, will address me as Your Most Radiant Highness, not this casual Your Highness business." "Of course, Your Most Radiant Highness," Alara replied, her tone perfectly measured. "If you will follow me to examination room 7, we can begin your screening." As they walked down the corridor, Serafina made sure to maintain a proper distance from the Terran. She couldn't help but notice how efficiently Alara moved, how her fingers danced across the medical scanner with practiced ease. It was almost as if she knew what she was doing, but that was clearly impossible. "Your Most Radiant Highness," Alara said, gesturing to the examination table. "Please make yourself comfortable while I review your previous medical records." Serafina perched herself on the edge of the table, her posture rigid with disdain. "I warn you, Terran, one wrong move, one slight miscalculation, and you will trigger an interstellar incident that your primitive planet won't soon forget." Alara paused in her review of the medical charts, meeting Seraphine's gaze directly. For a brief moment, something flickered in those brown eyes, something that made even Seraphine's royal blood run cold. But it passed so quickly, the princess convinced herself she had imagined it. "Your Most Radiant Highness can rest assured," Alara said smoothly, "that everything will be handled with the utmost care and precision. Now, shall we begin with a simple thermal scan, or would you prefer to lodge another formal protest first?" Vaylor gasped at the subtle impertinence, but Serafina was already launching into a fresh tirade about the audacity of Terran medical practitioners. Neither of them noticed the small smile playing at the corners of Valera's mouth, nor the way the other medical staff seemed to treat her with an unusual degree of deference. The stage was set, and Serafina had no idea she was about to star in her own diplomatic disaster. The examination proceeded with all the grace of a Martian dust storm, until Duchess Seraphine's third heart began to flutter erratically. At first, she dismissed the sensation as mere irritation at the Terran's presence, but when her scales started shifting from royal purple to a sickly green, even she couldn't deny something was wrong. "Your Most Radiant Highness," Alara said, medical scanner hovering over Seraphine's chest, "I'm detecting an irregular rhythm in your tertiary cardiovascular system. We should begin emergency treatment immediately." Serafina swatted the scanner away. "Nonsense. This is clearly a malfunction in your primitive equipment. Vaylor, contact the Royal Medical Team at once." Before Vaylor could reach for his communicator, Seraphine's legs buckled. She caught herself against the examination table, her usual fluid grace deserting her. By now, a small crowd had gathered outside the room, drawn by the commotion. "Please, Your Most Radiant Highness," Alara urged, reaching for a specialized medical injector. "This is a known complication of deep space travel in Celestian physiology. If we don't stabilize your third heart now, the other three will begin to compensate incorrectly. How dare you?" Serafina thundered, though her voice wavered. "I refuse to let a Terran inject me with whatever barbaric concoction you have prepared. I demand to see Dr. Orion Cass immediately." Alara stepped forward, injector ready. "Dr. Patel is in surgery. There isn't time to, guards." Serafina screamed, her scales now flashing warning colors. Two Celestian royal guards materialized from their quantum camouflage. "Remove this presumptuous Terran before she assassinates me." The guards moved to flank Alara, their plasma rifles humming to life. By now, the corridor outside was packed with onlookers. Dr. Orion Cass's assistant, a young Pleiadian named Dr. Selene Aster, pushed through the crowd. "What's happening here?" she demanded. Serafina drew herself up to her full height, swaying slightly. "This Terran attempted to poison me, under the guise of medical treatment, no less. Clearly, this is an assassination attempt orchestrated by Earth's government." Alara remained calm, though she carefully set down the injector. "Your Most Radiant Highness is experiencing a Class 3 cardiac event. Without immediate intervention, her condition will deteriorate rapidly. Listen to how she speaks." Serafina laughed, though the sound was strained. As if a Terran could possibly comprehend the intricacies of Celestian biology. "Tell them, Dr. Selene Aster, tell them how absurd this is." Dr. Selene Aster hesitated, her luminous skin dimming slightly. "Actually, Your Most Radiant Highness, Nurse Blake's diagnosis appears to be enough." Serafina interrupted. "I want this Terran stripped of her medical credentials immediately. In fact, I demand she be banned from practicing medicine anywhere in the galaxy. The very idea that we allow humans to treat superior species is laughable," the crowd murmured. Several aristocratic aliens nodded in agreement, while others looked uncomfortable. Alara stood perfectly still, her expression neutral, even as Serafina continued her tirade. "Look at her. Barely evolved past her planet's primitive primates, yet standing there pretending to understand medical science that took us millennia to perfect. Tell me, Terran, did you learn about Valmarian biology in between throwing spears at woolly mammals?" Scattered laughter echoed through the corridor. Vaylor tugged nervously at his ceremonial collar, all too aware of the recording devices capturing every moment of this diplomatic disaster. "This is what happens when we allow lesser species to rise above their station," Serafina proclaimed to her growing audience. "Next, they will suggest letting earthworms teach quantum physics at the Galactic Academy. I shall personally ensure that." Her words cut off abruptly as she clutched her chest. Her scales, now a dangerous shade of gray, began to ripple uncontrollably. Alara took a step forward, but the guards raised their weapons. "Your Most Radiant Highness," Alara said quietly. "You have approximately 40 seconds before total cardiovascular collapse. I can save your life, but you must let me act now." "Never," Serafina gasped, even as her legs gave way completely. "I would rather die than accept help from A." She crumpled to the floor, her scales fading to ash. The guards looked at each other uncertainly. Dr. Cellini Astor rushed forward with a scanner, her face pale. "She's entering system-wide failure," Dr. Cellini Astor announced. "We need to." Hannah Blake stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chaos with unexpected authority. "Lower your weapons, gentlemen." Now, something in her tone made the guards hesitate. In that moment of confusion, Alara snatched up the injector and moved with blinding speed. Before anyone could react, she had administered the treatment to Seraphine's tertiary cardiac region. The princess convulsed once, then lay still. For 3 terrible seconds, nothing happened. Then, color flooded back into her scales, spreading outward in a wave of healthy purple. Her breathing stabilized and her hearts resumed their normal rhythm. As Seraphine's eyes fluttered open, Alara stepped back and addressed the stunned crowd. "Dr. Cellini Astor, please take over the princess's care. I believe my presence is no longer required." She turned to leave, but Seraphine's weak voice stopped her. "How dare you touch me without permission? This is assault. This, Alara replied without turning around, "is going to make for a very interesting diplomatic meeting tomorrow morning." She walked away, leaving behind a chorus of confused whispers and one very angry, very alive princess who had no idea just how much trouble she was in. The next morning, Duchess Serafina stormed into the Galactic Council chamber, her scales blazing with righteous fury. She had spent hours preparing her speech about Terran insolence and the need for stricter regulations on alien medical practitioners. The chamber was unusually crowded, packed with diplomats, reporters, and various species representatives. "Members of the council," Serafina began, her voice ringing through the vast chamber. "Yesterday I was assaulted by a Terran nurse who, point of order," a calm voice interrupted. Serafina turned, ready to unleash her fury on whoever dared cut her off. The words died in her throat. Alara Vaughn stood at the central podium, but she wasn't wearing her nurse's uniform anymore. Instead, she was dressed in the distinctive midnight blue robes of a galactic peacekeeper, adorned with the rare platinum insignia worn only by the highest-ranking members of the Interstellar Diplomatic Corps. Ambassador Zara Valentine, Earth's senior diplomat, stepped forward. "Allow me to properly introduce Alara Vaughn, Earth's appointed celestial regent." A collective gasp rippled through the chamber. Even the normally stoic Andromedian ambassadors looked shocked, all 14 of their eyes blinking rapidly. "Impossible," Serafina whispered. Chief Strategist Valor, looking like he might faint, quickly pulled up the historical archives on his datapad. The holographic display showed footage from 5 years ago during the signing of the Galactic Peace Treaty. In the recording, representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered to end the devastating Nexus Wars. Billions had died in the conflict, and the galaxy teetered on the brink of collapse. The solution had been unprecedented. Each major power would select one individual to serve on the Stellar Conclave, a group that would work behind the scenes to maintain peace. These chosen individuals were given the ancient title of Galactic Kings, though they rarely revealed themselves publicly. They moved through society in disguise, gathering intelligence and intervening only when necessary. Their true identities were among the galaxy's most closely guarded secrets. "But Earth is primitive," Serafina protested. "They barely understand quantum manipulation. They can't possibly have a celestial regent." Alara, or rather Celestial Regent Blake, smiled. When the treaty was signed, many argued that Earth shouldn't be given a seat on the Stellar Conclave. We were too young, too inexperienced. But others pointed out that humans had something unique to offer. What could that possibly be? Serafina demanded. "Adaptability," Ambassador Valentine explained. While other species spent millennia perfecting single disciplines, humans learned to navigate constant change. We became experts at understanding other perspectives, at learning new skills quickly, at seeing patterns others missed. The holographic display shifted to show Alara's credentials. Advanced degrees in xenomedicine from the galaxy's top institutions, groundbreaking research papers on cross-species biology, diplomatic commendations from 30 different governments. For the past 5 years, Alara continued, I have worked as a nurse in various medical facilities across the galaxy. It's given me unique insights into how different species interact, how prejudices affect medical care, how power dynamics influence healing. Vaylor nervously cleared his throat. Your Most Radiant Highness, perhaps we should— No, Serafina cut him off. This must be some elaborate deception. A Terran couldn't possibly— Section 7, Paragraph 12 of the Galactic Peace Treaty, Alara recited from memory. The verification codes are Delta 79 Nexus Prime Echo 3. You can check them yourself. The codes appeared in the air, glowing with the distinctive quantum signature that couldn't be forged. Serafina felt her scales pale as the truth sank in. Yesterday, Alara said, addressing the entire chamber, a patient nearly died because she assumed a Terran couldn't understand Valmarian physiology. She was willing to risk her life rather than accept help from someone she considered inferior. The chamber fell silent. Even Seraphine's most ardent supporters looked uncomfortable. This isn't just about one incident, Alara continued. Every day, across thousands of worlds, people suffer because of assumptions about other species. The Nexus Wars started because we couldn't see past our differences. The Stellar Conclave exists to prevent that from happening again. Ambassador Valentine stepped forward. The role of Celestial Regent isn't about power or prestige. It's about understanding. King Blake has spent years working in hospitals, learning firsthand about the beings she's sworn to protect, not from a throne room or a diplomatic chamber, but from the front lines of healthcare. Seraphine's mind raced back to every interaction she had had with the supposed nurse. The subtle authority in her voice, the depth of her medical knowledge, the way other staff members deferred to her without realizing why they did it. The treaty is clear, Alara said, her voice gentle but firm. Any attempt to discriminate against medical practitioners based on species is a direct violation of galactic law. Any attempt to interfere with the Celestial Regent's chosen method of gathering intelligence is an offense punishable by immediate sanctions. The color drained from Vaylor's face. Sanctions, however, Alara continued, this incident has provided valuable insight into persistent prejudices within our medical system. I believe we can use this as an opportunity for positive change rather than punishment. Nyxia stood frozen, her worldview shattering around her. A Terran had saved her life, and not just any Terran, but one of the 12 beings entrusted with maintaining peace across the galaxy. The Stellar Conclave meeting will begin in 10 minutes, Alara announced. Princess Nyxia, as the catalyst for this diplomatic situation, you are invited to attend. I believe your perspective could be valuable in our discussions about medical reform. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor after all. As the chamber erupted in excited whispers, Nyxia realized that her carefully prepared speech about Terran inadequacy had just become evidence of her own prejudice. And somehow, the Terran she had mocked, the one she had threatened to ban from medical practice, now held her political future in those supposedly primitive hands. The Stellar Conclave chamber defied description, its architecture incorporating elements from 1,000 alien cultures. Princess Nyxia sat uncomfortably at the massive oval table, surrounded by beings of such power that their true forms were concealed by quantum veils. Only Alara appeared as herself, her simple blue robes a stark contrast to the elaborate disguises around her. The other 11 galactic kings studied Nyxia with invisible eyes, their judgment palpable in the charged air. The Celestian Dominion, a voice echoed from the shadows, has always been a proud supporter of the treaty. Until now, Nyxia straightened her spine. One minor incident hardly constitutes minor, another voice cut through the chamber. You publicly accused a galactic king of attempted assassination. The media streams are already broadcasting your comments across 17 sectors. Holographic displays materialized around the table, showing news reports from various worlds. Nyxia watched herself collapse in the hospital corridor, watched Alara save her life despite her protests. The recordings had gone viral, spreading faster than light through quantum communication networks. The diplomatic implications are severe, Ambassador Valentine explained. Earth's trading partners are demanding explanations. Several systems are threatening to review their medical exchange programs with the Celestian Dominion. Valor, sweating profusely, pulled up the latest economic projections. The numbers were devastating. Shares in Celestian medical technology had plummeted. 3 major hospital systems had already suspended their contracts. "This isn't fair," Nyxia protested. "How was I supposed to know she was a galactic king?" "That," Alara said quietly, "is precisely the point. You weren't supposed to know. No one was. I chose to work as a nurse because it allowed me to observe genuine interactions between species. Your behavior yesterday wasn't an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a larger problem." The implications hit Nyxia like a quantum blast. For 5 years, Alara had been gathering evidence of systematic discrimination in medical facilities across the galaxy. Every dismissive comment, every refusal of treatment, every assumption of incompetence had been noted and recorded by one of the most powerful beings in existence. The Celestian royal family's response to this crisis will determine much, one of the veiled kings announced. Princess Nyxia's actions have created a diplomatic situation that requires immediate attention. Ambassador Valentine displayed another set of statistics. 17 medical schools have reported increased incidents of discrimination against their Terran students. 3 Terran doctors have resigned from prestigious positions, citing hostile work environments. The ripple effects are spreading. "What do you want from me?" Nyxia asked, her voice smaller than she had ever heard it. Alara leaned forward. "What I want is for you to understand something fundamental about power, Your Most Radiant Highness. True power isn't about titles or technology or evolutionary advantages. It's about wisdom, about recognizing that strength comes in many forms, and that dismissing others based on preconceptions is the surest path to failure." The chamber hummed with energy as the other kings murmured in agreement. Nyxia realized with growing horror that her actions hadn't just embarrassed herself. They had potentially destabilized the delicate balance of power that maintained galactic peace. "The treaty exists," Alara continued, "because we learned the hard way that no species has a monopoly on intelligence or capability. Terrans may be young by galactic standards, but we were chosen for the Stellar Conclave because we understand something crucial about survival." "And what's that?" Nyxia whispered. "That the universe is too vast and too complex for any one species to claim superiority. That survival depends on cooperation, on recognizing and respecting the strengths of others. Yesterday, you nearly died because you couldn't accept that truth." The weight of tradition and prejudice pressed down on Nyxia's scales. Generations of Celestian royalty had prided themselves on their advanced evolution, their superior culture, but here she sat, alive only because a Terran had seen past her arrogance to do what needed to be done. "The Stellar Conclave requires a response," one of the veiled kings declared. "The stability of the treaty depends on it." Alara raised her hand. "If I may suggest a path forward, Princess Nyxia has unintentionally provided us with an opportunity. Her actions have exposed prejudices that usually remain hidden. Instead of punishment, perhaps we can use this situation to create meaningful change." The chamber fell silent, waiting. Even Nyxia found herself holding her breath. "I propose," Alara said, "that Princess Nyxia work with me to establish new protocols for cross-species medical training. Her experience, combined with the data I have gathered, could help prevent similar incidents in the future." The other kings shifted in their seats. This was unprecedented, a galactic king offering direct collaboration with someone who had publicly insulted them. "And if I refuse?" Nyxia asked, though she already knew the answer. "Then the Stellar Conclave will have no choice but to invoke Article 7 of the treaty," Ambassador Valentine replied. "The economic and diplomatic consequences would be significant." Nyxia looked around the chamber, at the beings who held the fate of civilizations in their hidden hands. She thought about Alara working quietly in hospitals across the galaxy, gathering intelligence while saving lives. She thought about how close she had come to dying because of her own prejudice. "I accept," Nyxia said, her scales shifting to the deep blue of humility. "I will work with Celestial Regent Blake to address these issues." Alara smiled, and for the first time, Nixia saw what others must have seen in her all along, the quiet strength that had earned her a place among the galaxy's most powerful beings. "Then let's begin," Alara said, "by discussing exactly what happened in that hospital corridor and why it can never happen again." The power had shifted, not with violence or threats, but with understanding. And as the stellar conclave moved on to other matters, Nixia realized that she had learned more about true leadership in the past day than in all her years of royal training. The universe, it seemed, still had much to teach her. 6 months after the incident, Princess Nixia found herself back at St. Aurora's Interstellar Medical Center. This time, she walked through the quantum glass doors with a different purpose, her scales shimmering with a mix of determination and nervous energy. "Welcome, students," she announced to the gathered crowd of medical practitioners from 50 different species. "Today's seminar on cross-species cultural awareness in healthcare will address the critical mistakes I made during my own treatment." The audience stirred with interest. No one had expected a Valmarian royal to speak so openly about their failings. At the back of the room, Hannah Blake, still wearing her nurse's uniform, nodded encouragingly. "When I first came to this hospital," Serafina continued, "I believed that my species' advanced evolution made us superior. I nearly died because of that belief. But thanks to the intervention of someone I wrongly judged as inferior, I learned a valuable lesson about true advancement." She activated the holographic display, showing footage from that fateful day. Many in the audience had seen the viral recordings, but watching them with Seraphine's commentary brought new perspective. Notice how the Terran nurse, now known to us all as Celestial Regent Blake, maintained professional composure despite my provocations. She prioritized patient care over personal pride, something I failed to do as a patient. In the months since the incident, Serafina and Hannah had worked closely together, reviewing cases of discrimination in medical facilities across the galaxy. The data had been eye-opening. We discovered that 70% of serious medical complications in cross-species treatment were caused not by lack of knowledge, but by cultural misunderstandings and prejudice, Serafina explained. Patients refusing treatment from certain species, medical staff making assumptions about patient needs based on evolutionary bias. A young Pleiadian doctor raised her hand. "How do we address these biases when they're so deeply ingrained in our cultures?" "By remembering that medicine transcends species," Hannah answered, joining Serafina at the podium. "When I chose to work as a nurse, many questioned why a galactic king would take such a position. But healing is one of the few universal constants. Every species, no matter how different, understands the importance of preserving life." Serafina nodded. "The new protocols we have developed require all medical staff to undergo immersive training in various species cultures. More importantly, they require patients to acknowledge that medical competence isn't determined by evolutionary age or technological advancement." The changes hadn't come easily. Several conservative Valmarian nobles had protested against their princess working so closely with the Terran, but the results spoke for themselves. In facilities where the new protocols had been implemented, cross-species treatment success rates had improved by 30%. Leadership, Serafina continued, isn't about maintaining traditional hierarchies. It's about recognizing when those traditions harm rather than help. My experience taught me that true nobility lies not in claiming superiority, but in admitting when we're wrong and working to do better. Hannah stepped forward. The Stellar Conclave has approved these protocols for implementation across all treaty-affiliated medical facilities. But more important than any official policy is the change in perspective they represent. The audience listened intently as Serafina shared specific examples from her own learning process. She spoke about discovering that Terran medical techniques, while different from Valmarian methods, often offered innovative solutions to complex problems. She described how working with Hannah had shown her that leadership could be quiet and unassuming, yet incredibly effective. "The future of galactic medicine," Serafina declared, depends on our ability to see beyond our prejudices. Every species has something valuable to contribute, whether they have been traveling the stars for millennia or have only recently joined our galactic community. As the seminar concluded, Serafina noticed Hannah speaking quietly with a group of medical students. The Terran's presence still commanded respect, but now it was earned through demonstrated competence rather than revealed authority. "Your Most Radiant Highness," Hannah said later, as they reviewed the day's proceedings. "I believe you have finally understood what the treaty was meant to protect." Seraphine's scales shifted to a thoughtful shade of purple. "Not just peace between worlds, but the recognition that diversity makes us stronger, that no species has a monopoly on wisdom or capability." "Precisely," Hannah smiled. "Though I must admit, I never expected my cover assignment would lead to such a dramatic transformation in galactic medical policy." "The best leaders," Serafina replied, echoing lessons learned over months of collaboration, "create change through example rather than force. You taught me that, though it took nearly dying for me to learn it." As they looked out over the hospital grounds, where beings from countless worlds work together to preserve life in all its forms, both knew that their work had only begun. But the foundations had been laid for a future where medical care would be truly universal, unbound by the prejudices of the past. "We still have much to learn from each other," Serafina said softly. Hannah nodded. "That, Your Most Radiant Highness, is exactly why Earth was given a seat on the Stellar Conclave. Not because we had all the answers, but because we never stopped looking for new ones. The resolution wasn't perfect, but it was a beginning. And in the grand scheme of galactic politics, sometimes beginnings were the most powerful force of all." 2 years later, at the Galactic Medical Conference on New Earth, Duchess Serafina watched with pride as the millionth graduate of the Cross-Species Cultural Awareness Program received their certification. The young Valmarian doctor bowed deeply, accepting the honor from none other than Hannah Blake herself. If someone had told me 3 years ago that I had be celebrating humans teaching Valmarians about medicine, Serafina mused to Ambassador Valentine, I would have had them tested for quantum psychosis. The ambassador chuckled. "Times change, though I must say, the latest statistics are remarkable." She brought up a holographic display showing the impact of their reforms. Intergalactic medical cooperation had reached unprecedented levels. Species that once refused to treat each other now worked side by side in hospitals across the galaxy. The Valmarian Empire, once known for its medical isolationism, had become a leading advocate for cross-species healthcare integration. "There's something I have been meaning to tell you," Hannah said, approaching them after the ceremony. "Something that puts our first meeting in an even more interesting light." Seraphine's scales rippled with curiosity. "More interesting than discovering my nurse was a galactic king," Hannah smiled. "Remember how you questioned whether humans could understand Valmarian physiology? Well, the truth is, I had a rather personal motivation for specializing in Valmarian medicine." She pulled up an ancient medical record dated nearly 200 years ago. "This is a genetic scan of one of Earth's first extraterrestrial visitors. A Valmarian scout ship crashed in a region called Norway. The pilot survived thanks to a local healer, who, despite having no knowledge of alien biology, managed to save their life." Serafina leaned forward, her third eye widening. "But that would mean ... double quotes yes," Hannah nodded. "That healer was my great-great-grandmother, and the Valmarian she saved. According to these records, they were from a rather particular bloodline." The genetic markers flashed on screen, and Serafina felt all four of her hearts skip. "The royal bloodline, you mean? Your great-great-grandfather survived because a Terran healer refused to let species differences stand in the way of saving a life. The knowledge gained from that encounter became the foundation for Terran understanding of Valmarian biology." Ambassador Valentine watched with amusement as Serafina processed this revelation. "So you see, Your Most Radiant Highness, humans and Valmarians have been helping each other longer than either side would care to admit. Why didn't you tell me this before?" Serafina asked. Hannah's expression grew serious. "Because you needed to learn the lesson on your own, just as humanity had to earn its place among the stars through action rather than ancestry." Change that comes from understanding lasts longer than change forced by revelation. Looking around the conference hall, Serafina saw the living embodiment of that change. Young doctors from worlds that had once been bitter enemies now collaborated on groundbreaking research. Medical knowledge flowed freely across species boundaries, enriching all. "I suppose," Serafina said thoughtfully, "this makes us family." In a rather roundabout way, family, Hannah agreed, bound not by blood or biology, but by the choice to see past differences and help each other. Perhaps that's the strongest connection of all. As the conference continued around them, Serafina reflected on how far she had come from that arrogant princess who had walked into St. Aurora's medical center. She had learned that true strength lay not in claiming superiority, but in recognizing the potential in others. "So," Hannah said with a mischievous glint in her eye, "shall I start addressing you as cousin?" Serafina laughed, her scales dancing with colors of joy and wisdom learned. "I think your most radiant highness works just fine. After all, some traditions are worth keeping, even as we build new ones." Together, they watched the next generation of healers, their futures now brightened by the understanding that had grown from one princess's mistake and one Terran's patience. The galaxy was changing, one medical miracle at a time, proving that sometimes the greatest discoveries come not from technological advancement, but from the simple willingness to see each other as equals. And somewhere in the quantum streams of spacetime, a Terran healer and a crashed Valmarian pilot smiled at what their chance encounter had sparked. Generations later, in the endless dance of stars, the end.